everyone. I'm very sorry for the delay. Some technical difficulties we've been having for the last few minutes, but we got through it. And please join me in welcoming Zara Kay. Hello, Zara.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yes, sorry guys, the technical difficulties is mostly because I'm in Australia and we don't have the best of internets, but also, I don't know, I think it's just not, my internet is just acting up really. But thank you for having me, Hanney.
Oh, thank you very much for accepting my invitation. I've been meaning to have a chat with you for quite some time. We obviously live in the same country and we have similar backgrounds because I'm an ex-Muslim myself. So I'm very surprised that we haven't crossed, path before. But I am sure we'll see more of each other in the next few weeks and months to come in any of the Melbourne or Australia rallies to come. But I wanted to introduce you to my audience who are really interested in areas of science and philosophy and psychology. But they're mostly irreligious folks and a lot of ex-Muslims as well. Your journey is quite interesting. I know a little bit, and I resisted to read more about you because I wanted to be shocked for the first time with everyone else. So tell us a little bit about your maybe upbringing, if you like, and your background, and how did you break away from the inheritance of yours?
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting when you actually get to hear it from the person itself instead of reading about them, because I think you can have more of a conversation than forming an opinion. And a lot of things, I think a lot of podcasts that I have always covered different topics and different aspects. And as I go along this journey, because I still think it is a journey, it's never going to be an ultimate destination. There's so many things I learn about myself, about my past, and uncover a lot of what has been remaining as part of coming from, I would say, a cult, which I didn't realize until whatever happened in Tanzania. I always thought that I came from this progressive-ish or non-extremist group until what they did to me in Tanzania, which was, I think somebody had mentioned, was quite disappointing as well. But it brought us here, and I'm safe now with the help of so many people. And I couldn't have done it without everybody's support, motivational messages. But yeah, thank you so much for it up and keeping up with my very unstable internet network. I hope that it continues to be as good as it has been.
That's all right. Well, I mean, I'm hearing you at the moment, and I'm hearing your thoughts. That's what matters, really. So, just a bit of a background. Can you tell us a bit more about Tanzania? Not too many people will sort of know much about the country. Like, for example, what is the dominant religion? What's the percentage like in terms of Muslims or any other non-Muslims sort of exist in the country? And how is it to live over there?
Yeah. So I guess Tanzania is quite different. It's not a Muslim majority country per se. It doesn't have any of the Sharia laws. But, recently, I think last weekend, I was talking to my dad's high school friend who was in Tanzania in the 1970s and until the 80s. And we were comparing our notes in terms of what religion was like. And it was so different at that time than it is now. So Tanzania is a multicultural society, not as multicultural as we would see in the West. We have the majority population is Black Africans, and then you have the brown Africans, people like me, who have backgrounds from, well, I'm from a Khoja background, so it's like in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Indianish background with a mix of African. It's generations ago, so it was my great grandfather who had moved as a merchant or a trader to Tanzania, and my mom's Kenyan, so very similar. And in essence, a lot of the East African countries, including Kenya, but mostly Tanzania and Uganda close by, are quite corrupt. And basically, a lot of it has to do with policies and constitutions that don't only not favor women, but they don't favor anybody who's not Black as well. So when when BLM was going on, and while I understood this was largely in the US, it was so shocking to me because I come from the complete opposite background. And initially I thought it was only me being spoken about it, and you know, racism goes all ways. So there's a lot of racism and class system, but nobody likes to talk about it. Nobody likes to talk about the differences in our religion. You'll see the Christians not actually agreeing with the Muslims, but they don't talk about it. It's such, they try to be harmonious by being blissfully ignorant and not tackling the problems. I remember, so I came from a Shia background, so I was raised as a 12er Shia in the Khoja, which is the ethnicity community. And there, at the time before I left, there were like only 10,000, 12,000 in Tanzania. Not a lot as compared to the population in Tanzania, but they're quite powerful community when it comes to government influences, money, and connections. And that's largely how Tanzania works. So like any developing country, you know, the poor tend to remain poor, the rich tend to remain rich. And that's where there's more room for corruption. But when you also have discrimination of races and class systems in the mix, you start to identify why that corruption exists. Because a lot of people are like, oh, you're a brown person, so you automatically have more money. Or if there's a white person, they literally see you as an ATM machine. And when I say they, I mean the general population, not a lot of the people who are educated, who understand the differences, who understand the different cultures as well. There is this compulsion that if you're in Tanzania, you have to do as Tanzania is like. And you can't win the system despite your ethics and morals, which made my case in Tanzania very, very difficult, because as soon as it went public, which was while I was still in jail, there was a lot of heat on the corrupt police officers who had no charges against me, but they had no idea. They didn't even know my legal name. They didn't know what passport I held. They didn't know that I am not a Tanzanian. I'm in fact a foreigner. And not only are they arresting a foreigner on no grounds, but they've arrested an activist who has international exposure. Not to blow my trumpet, all the exposure came from all the other people who don't even know me and came, you know, regardless of their background. Tanzania is largely a very theistic background, and that doesn't necessarily mean Abrahamic religion, despite Christianity being the majority and Islam just reaching there, if not more now. But a lot of the Tanzanians that I actually had meaningful discourse with were God believers, but they didn't believe in Jesus being the God. It was more of a deistic or theistic point of view. So the idea of no God doesn't exist to many, but that's changing. However, there's a lot of cultural differences that you would have when you're discussing a topic in the West, or in, I guess you'd see the differences of somebody who's brought up in the West with somebody who's brought up from a different cultural background, let's say the Middle East. You're likely to have different conversations, and Tanzania is one of them, where they pride on their culture being preserved, but also not recognizing that they don't actually give women equal rights. They don't, like, and this is purely without religion. It's just the misogyny in Tanzania is very traditional, and religion doesn't help at all. So in my case, when I was brought up, I was never exposed to the Black African side of Tanzania as much until I moved out of Tanzania and started making friends. Because usually when you're a Muslim, when you're in an ethnicity, like a certain ethnicity, so even if people were of the same ethnicity but were Sunni, we wouldn't talk to them as much. And we lived next to Hindu neighbors, and it was like being family, but I wasn't allowed to go to their houses because then I'd be considered impure, and then I'd have to go shower. And if you guys haven't heard of that concept, Shias have this concept that if you're not from the book, you cannot eat their food. So technically, when I was in Tanzania, my family's friends went like, oh, you know, you can't be around your daughter or touch her or eat her food, because I was cooking there while I was living with my brother. And it was so shocking to see that people were so blinded by religion to not realize that what you're saying is quite discriminatory. Like, I know I met a lot of Hindus who went like, oh, but it's their religion. And I'm like, but as a Hindu, you've grown up around us. Do you not at all feel that this is discrimination? Like, what are they trying to say about you're human beings in the end? It doesn't matter what you believe in. How does that automatically make you impure? And I think the person had never thought about it to counter it. It was just accepted because, you know, everybody just wants to live in a bed of roses and butterflies. But for me, concepts like homosexuality, even sex education were never. Holocaust. I had never studied about the Holocaust until in 2015 I went to Germany, and they're like, you know, there's a Jewish memorial, and I'm like, what happened? Like, I don't understand. And they're like, did you not take history lessons? And I'm like, in Tanzania, you're taught a certain manner. Evolution was taught as, this is what somebody believed in, but we believe that God created us, and it never went in depth. It never taught us about any evolutionary process. It just said this existed, this is what they believe in, but it's not true, right? So in a way, our education system was also rigged to suit what our bigotry or what our bubble confined us to believe in. So my biggest cultural shock was when I went to Malaysia, a Muslim majority country, and I was 16, and I was wearing a headscarf at age 8, and I went to Malaysia, and I go to this prayer room. I can't say I was an avid prayer. I used to love missing prayers or lie about it, because it just never made sense to me to pray. I was very methodical. So when I went to this room, because all my friends were going, so obviously I have to pretend to pray as well. I went to this room, I'm wearing a hijab, and while I'm doing my wudu, which is cleaning yourself before you go, I see this woman walk in without a hijab, does the same thing I do, and then she puts on the prayer garments that are there. She wears it, and then she prays, and then she takes it off and she leaves. So this can clearly prayed. She's a Muslim and she doesn't wear the hijab. Like, you can't be a Muslim and not wear a hijab. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. And that was that moment, and I remember it so clearly, was so shocking to me, where I'm like, that is an option you can have. Because when I was 12 and I told my mom, what happens if I want to remove the hijab? And she said, you know, well, your dad's never going to allow it. Then I'm like, and then what? Like, so dad's not going to allow it, but then what? And it's like, oh, well, you'll have to wait to see when you get married and what your husband says. And at that point, as a young 12-year-old, I just had to accept what it was, but it was so hard to comprehend that, you know, I never had my autonomy, and I didn't even know what those words meant. I didn't know what feminism was. I didn't know what equal rights was. I always, like, my dad had raised us. We were girls. We had certain clothing that we had to wear. But when it came to activities, my sisters would play sport. My brother was not interested. So my sisters and I would go out more with friends. My brother was mostly a home person. I got to study overseas, but my brother, being the firstborn, never had that opportunity because he was destined to take over the family business. And I came from a very poor family where my parents couldn't afford my fee, which would now equate to like $100. And this was not too long ago, so maybe about less than 20 years ago. And you not sit outside the classroom, and because they wouldn't let me study, they're like, oh, your parents didn't pay the school fees. And it was such an embarrassing moment. But when I started growing up and I knew that I wanted to get out of Tanzania because I just simply did not fit in, things like my world could not have been that small. It had to grow and it had to be big. finance was a very, very big concern. So we went to Malaysia first because, well, we decided, you know, my family decided that if you're going to study, then yeah, sure, you can go for a year and then come back. But, you know, I wanted to get out. And at that point, it had nothing to do with religion as such, because it wasn't my central focal point, even though it was a big part of my identity. I think I was more interested in exploring the identity that had more to do with beyond who I am as a Muslim girl, like, or as a Tanzanian, because not a lot of Tanzanians would go overseas. And if they did, you have to be really rich. And at that point, that was all my parents could afford. So I went overseas. And, you know, Tanzania did not have the educational facilities outside medicine, business administration, and bits of computer science that is now increasing. But when I was there, it was just a really small bubble. And that's where, you know, that's where my journey began of self-discovery more than anything, when I left home at 16.
So it's very strange because you sounds like you were born into a very interesting situation where culture is intertwined with religion, and it's all confused. There's a bit of culture, a bit of religion, and you couldn't tell which one is which. It's an interesting, and when it happens in a country, it becomes the most dangerous because it's almost like the cultural norms become some sort of pseudo religion, and nobody knows what actually the real source of one's belief, but it stems from somewhere, and everybody does that. So if you don't, then you're weird, or you're crazy, but everybody does it and everybody follows it, but nobody would question that. So that's an interesting, and you'll find it in lots of countries in the Middle East. I'm half Egyptian myself, so I'm African like you, and we do have the different colors in the Egyptian sort of different ethnicities, and like down the south in Sudan, for example, Aswan, where the Nubian people are, they're darker. You can see me, I've got like fair skin for an Egyptian, and you can find a lot of Egyptians yeah. Go ahead. You froze
yeah,
up
sorry,
there.
if we feel like we're interrupting, it's mostly not because we're being rude. Sorry. Yeah, so if we feel like we're interrupting, it's mostly my internet connection. So trying to do the best.
No, that's right.
But I guess my question was there, despite them being Muslims of different color in your area?
Sorry, Zara, I'm going to have to get you to repeat the full question again because it got
That's
sort of
okay.
caught in the middle. But you're back again. So, if you can ask
Okay.
again, please.
Yeah, so I guess in your area, because there were different colors, different ethnic backgrounds, but most of them would be Muslims, do you think there was racial discrimination in the Muslim world where you were from?
Oh yeah, I think the Arabic world can be quite racist. Your situation was quite interesting because it's like reverse racism, where black people are sort of the most dominant and therefore maybe are favored. So that's an interesting thing. That proves really it's not the white versus, it's just wherever you're dominant, you're going to bully the minority of some sort, and it's always the case. So that's quite interesting to me to see the reverse racism, which hope that so it's more the larger group versus the smaller group for some reason.
Yeah, and it's not to say that, you know, brown people were not racist towards black people, but definitely because they weren't in power. So if you look at the recent parliament meeting, you will not find anybody who's not black. You'll find women, which is great. It's a step forward, definitely. But you will never find brown people in those meetings, in those discussions, in those political I guess in those political spaces as much as you would in the West. So brown people like would never get that seat, and the friends or the people that I know that even tried would never be voted, or would end up having risked their family for daring to try. So it really makes it so difficult, while constitutionally, you know, we can apply, but we will never, or in this current scenario, we will never be there. And I say we because I still am Tanzanian. I may hold an Australian passport. Tanzanian has been my home, which I think a lot of people like holding on to that semantic. But yeah, no, the whole reverse, I guess reverse racism, or just racism in general. And, you know, I think there was a lot of criticism in terms of, you don't understand their oppression. And I'm like, I may have had on some occasions more money than other people, but that doesn't stop anybody from being racist. It wasn't a money issue. It wasn't a wealth issue. It was a purely skin color, ethnicity. When I was in Tanzania this time, I had the police officer actually tell me, this is not your country, get out of here. And when I said, no, my parents live here, this is always going to be home, and it was like, it's not your parents' country either. Like, this is our country. Or my brother, you know, in his line of work, he was at work discriminated by a female woman saying, you brown people, you come here to our land, you take away our land, and, you know, you want all the money, you want all the businesses. And my brother he was completely shocked, because he never saw her like that. He never saw her race. It was a purely business meeting, and he's taken back to say, hang on, why is this coming on me? I'm here to negotiate on business terms. But it happens, and our voices are so silenced. And then we have an additional barrier of religion that comes in, where, you know, you could be, like you said, in Egypt, the same religion, different races, and then have that fight against you as well.
In Egypt, we have majority Muslims, but up to 12% are Christians, Coptic Egyptians. The very funny thing is, when you tell me about this particular racist episode, you know, looking into racism and the psychological, I looked into the psychological reasons for it, and it wasn't. That was just a very superficial reason for it. It's deeper. It's in the biology. It's the xenophobia, which means literally fear of strangers. So, back in the day, if you meet a tribe, we're talking about hominids, even, you know, prior to Homo sapiens, and there will be fear of group of people that don't look like you, or not dressed like you, because they're very likely to kill you or want to steal your possession. So it was a very justified fear at that time. I don't know why they call it a phobia, because phobia is a fear of something that is not logical. But I think it's quite logical. I think they had because some of them were killed, some of their possessions were snatched. So I can understand that. But it's one of those things like pareidolia or hyper agency detection, where we developed as the notion for God. It was good for a certain period, and it's time to let go. It's actually no longer helpful. It's actually hindering the human race, because collaboration is what's going to help us survive the future, really.
But then there's a certain hypocrisy where, when they go to other countries, they want to be the dominant one, where they can't accept criticism that, hey, hang on, you know, you do this in your country, and then, you know, you come here. And I think the West at large, and I'm not saying completely, we do have equal rights. I've never been discriminated on my race for any jobs, right? I've had racial attacks once in Australia, just once. And that was over football. So, you know, I don't know why you're so against Islam. I'm a Muslim. I pray and I don't wear the hijab. I believe you were raised in a very strict community. Hiba, I don't know if you joined the first part of the conversation where I just said the exact opposite, where I wore the hijab and I wasn't raised in that community, where I had more rights than my brother. And basically, like, my dad made it mandatory that all women at the age of 16 should know how to drive, because he didn't know how to drive. And I was 14 at the time, and he's like, I can't wait for you to grow up and start driving. So all, like, the girls in the family all have a car, and we've all led our own lives. None of us are married. My sister's divorced, but none of us are married. My brother is now going through a separation and a divorce, but it's all quite accepted. But it mostly came from my family, and I think I was one of the people who encouraged breaking free from such boundaries. So my distaste about Islam has nothing to do with my experiences, because I feel that while I was relatively conservative in terms of, you have to wear a hijab, my parents were quite relaxed. Like, when we would go to the beaches, we wouldn't wear bikinis, but when we're in the water, you can't wear a hijab, it's going to strangle you, so don't wear it. Or like, just go relax, or go out with your friends. And my dad would go like, well, here's some money, it's your 16th birthday, go out with your friends. And we all had a curfew. I think
what I found very
Sorry, go on.
infuriating is the reductionist approach. She reckons, or she for some reason under the impression, just because of hijab, that's the sole reason you left Islam. And I'm sure the situation is pretty complex, and it's multifaceted. So maybe this is a good stage if you can start telling us what were the things that start. Go ahead, Zara.
I just want to answer the last question on Jennifer Robinson, who was one of my lawyers. I have so much respect for the Dowdy Street lawyers. Had it not been for them, I would have still been in Tanzania. The way they championed my case, and they were pro bono, and honestly, like, the first meeting I had with them was the first night in Tanzania that I slept in peace, because I knew I had good lawyers. My lawyers in Tanzania were bought off. As we paid them money, and a lot of money, and that was like a lot of money for my family. Somehow people assume that I'm rich, we're not. But my lawyers in Tanzania were bought off. But Jennifer Robinson, Kalihan, Matt as well, all of them were so phenomenal in their work, their approach, and I would highly recommend that if you're ever looking for lawyers, they're so worth your time. They're amazing with human rights. They're really thorough and great. But going back to my segue into Islam. So I started wearing the hijab at 8. I chose to wear it because I saw everybody else doing it. My mom actually stopped me. She's like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, are you absolutely sure? Wear it. I want to wear it because everybody else wears it. And the mom was like, look, it's your choice. We did buy something for you that may fit you, only because, we thought you'd wait until you're 9. But, my older sister wore it when she was 12. So there was this expectation that I would wear it once. I was like, why not start now? I wasn't allowed to listen to music at home on religious days, but when we had iPods at the time, we could listen to our own music. But I went into this whole I'm not listening to music for 3-4 months period, even if I wasn't praying daily, because praying for me had to be very spiritual. No matter what religion you are, you have to be able to feel that connection. And that was my mindset for a while. And then at 14, as I started growing up, I was like, I don't want to pray. And my dad would ask me, and I'm like, I haven't prayed. And he's like, are you going to, there was this kind of pressure, are you going to pray? And I'm like, fine, I'll do it. But it was never forced on me, as in like, you have to go pray. I mean, sure, there were wide eyes sometimes, and that expectation that I never wanted to disappoint my parents. So I did it, but I left home at 16. So amongst many other, as you say, strict Muslims, I don't think many women would leave home at any age older, but I was 16, I went to college. And that's when I could have done anything I wanted in my, because I had no parents there. I had nobody guarding over me. It was my life, my university. I still continued wearing the hijab, even though it would slightly become loose. Or I would like to, or when I wanted to go for dance classes, and I'm like, this is something I like, so I'm going to do it. And I'm still going to be a Muslim, right? So I kept holding on this identity of being a Muslim and defined it as my path was more spiritual than it is for what other people want me to be. And this is how largely my family are continuing to evolve, especially since what happened to me in Tanzania, when they saw how the community was suffocating all of us. And they're like, but we still believe in Islam and we still love you. We don't agree with you, but you know, there's no reason why we can't talk and we can avoid talking about such topics. And that's great, right? I don't need anything else. It's your journey, it's your life. You do what you want to do. I am not the one who's going to guide it. So, you know, I had that period from like 16.
Yeah, this is brilliant.
Yeah, it took us a while. It took us a while. It wasn't roses and butterflies. It took us a few months of not talking, of going like, hey, you can't talk to me this way, or them going like, we're not impressed. And I'm like, but if you don't want to see my content, you have the option of blocking me, and that's okay. And I'm not going to post up any of my Allah's gay videos or anything. Like, I'll be respectful of your boundaries as long as you're respectful of my boundaries. And it was really, I think my journey evolved a lot as I got on to speaking to more people, not just about religion, but more exposure in life, the traveling, the learning, you know, being in university. I didn't know what homosexuality was. And when I found out, I was like, so why do people care who you're with? Like, it was so logical to me that you shouldn't be discriminated, because how would I like it that as a Muslim woman, I was racially discriminated in Malaysia by an Indian Tamil teacher who said, you know, who didn't actually know that English was my first language, and I spoke fluent English and also with an American accent at the time, and I just needed the Malaysian accent, and he was racist to me on multiple accounts, and I was like, I don't understand this, and it was mostly because I was wearing a hijab. But it didn't limit him to be racist towards other Africans as well. So just putting it out there, they weren't Muslims anyway. But that was mostly a him problem. But as I grew older and learned more about life, and my first dissent was when I was supporting gay rights. I was like, why do we as Muslims included, why do we care about what they wear? Like, oh, sorry, about what they do, what they wear, what women wear. Why are we in this realm that in the 21st century, we can't mind our own business? How does it affect you, what other people do? My family largely accepted my hijab at the age of 18. I moved to Australia at 19. And for anybody talking about my poor family, we're all very independent. We all have our own businesses, our own jobs. So thank you. I'm not on an Israeli payroll. I work as an analytics manager, and I've worked for Google and Samsung. So I've worked for very big companies, being an African woman and an only Tanzanian woman in engineering. And no, I didn't get paid to do that, like for Islam. All of that happened after.
I actually, so Zara, while you're talking, while you're talking, I actually have an accusation for you right in the middle. I didn't want to show it because the guy is probably using Google Translate. He's a bit of a retard, to be honest.
Okay.
I mean, you can tell it's incoherent. He's used Google Translate, and he's accusing you of leaving Islam so that you would make money.
That's why I brought it. That's why I brought it up. So, I can't say. Sorry, I can't say my family is poor. We're not, but their money is theirs. My money is mine. I know that when we come from Middle Eastern or Indian cultures, we have this tendency of sending money to our parents. But my parents have actually gone like, we never accept money from anybody, right? Like even from my brother or anyone, especially daughters. They're like, you've earned your success. You know, when I was flying on business class, working with Google, not to pry, it was the first time that my family recognized the importance of education, because I was the first one who went on to do a bachelor's and a master's degree. When we're going to get married and have kids, and I'm like, no, I'm going to show you, I'm not going to do it. They did. Credit where credit is due. They did support me as much as they could. And they were a result of their environment. And I don't hold it against them. So my journey to leaving Islam started on more humanistic values that, you know, that I didn't recognize were in opposition of Islam.
What age were you, Zara, when you left?
So I stopped praying at 14. Like, I stopped actually believing in God, even if I would sometimes pray. It was a very hard balance to say I never believed in God after 14, but I stopped properly praying every day at 14. I was still at home. And at 16, my dad would call me. He's like, oh, have you prayed? I'm like, oh, yeah, no, not really. I'm in university. And he's like, okay, well, when you get a chance, pray, it'll be good for you. And then I slowly stopped eating non-halal meat because I was like, I found the halal way of killing animals, and not that there is any humane way of killing animals for all those vegans. I completely understand the argument, but it was slowly becoming a progress where I was like, why is simple things as my freedom being restricted by this ideology that I did not pick? I was born into this. I did not have the choice. And why are these simple things like, listening to music restrained? Just something as simple as playing the piano, gone. And I've always wanted to play an instrument and I don't yet. But it always started off with this little things that built up to when I first saw that this couple from my community were being discriminated because one of their sons was gay and he was in Canada and he got married. And, the parents were like, we're happy for you. So the parents obviously had their own journey, because I've been with their son for so long. And I was like, what gives you as a community and as a leaderboard to shame them in such a way? So I was like one of the first people that spoke about it as a Muslim. What I got in response was death threats. I got in response was rape threats. I got people saying, why don't you leave religion? And I'm like, I'll do what I want. Like, you're not going to persuade me. And they start throwing all these Quranic verses. And I'm like, surely there's a Quranic verse that says we can disagree in religion and we don't have to fight. Like, it exists, So I start Googling and I'm like, every verse, the one that says when you kill one man, you kill an entire country or something, or civilization, or, your religion is yours, my religion is mine. And I'm like, but if they disagree with you in faith, then kill them, strike their necks, go into war with them unless they repent. And I'm like, no, I am not going to repent. My values stand where human rights come before your feelings, come before your religious feelings. I do not care if I oppose with parts of the Quran. So I about, what the Quran, so I think I cut off. So I started reading so much about what does the Quran say about women, right? I didn't know about these wife-beating verses. I read the Quran in Arabic, like anybody would. So this time I started reading it in English and reading different tafsirs from the Shia side to the Sunni side.
Actually, I was going to ask you, Zara, can you understand Arabic?
Not really. I studied it for 12 years, so I could pick up on words when people talk about conversation. Not anymore, because it's been like 14 years, and none of us spoke Arabic at home. We largely spoke Swahili, English, and Gujarati.
No, I know your age.
Very, very proud to be 28. Very proud to be 28. But I started reading more of the Quran. I'm like, you know what? This is my journey, right? And if I want to prove to my family or to anybody that I hold these views, I need to read up about it. And honestly, I cried for 2 weeks when I read so many verses that said, strike your wives. And then I went like, oh, but it's a metaphor. And I listened to all different explanations. And I'm like, so where's the husband beating verse? Just very logical.
Did you get the toothbrush thing that you?
Yeah, the miswak. I got that all. And it was, I was so shocked. But what was even shocking was when I went to Tanzania this time and I had that confrontation with my own dad. And I was like, but the Quran says that women are half of a man's worth in testimony, and you have 5 daughters, right? Do you think that your son deserves more than the daughters? My dad's silent, right? And I'm like, and your daughters are not going to get married. None of them want to get married. And I'm
Do you
like,
want to
and
have,
in
do you want to have
Testament,
a I'll make you laugh now. Do you know the explanation for why the testimony of a man is worth of twice of a woman? There was a Muslim sheikh that said, who said the reason for that, it was because women have a certain gland somewhere in their neck that he forgot its name. He actually literally said that on
yeah.
TV. He said, I forgot its name. There's some gland that causes women to forget things. That's why when one woman forgets, the other one will remind her. It's insane.
And the other comprehensive version was like, I'm like, sure, there's a smart explanation, was that women were not well versed in trade and whatnot. They didn't have enough education. And I'm like, so the Quran is a book of all times. And when I go to my house, I am the one who's most educated. And you want me to say that my testimony is worth half of a man, when my dad single-handedly knows that I could take on any of his sheikhs or friends in any argument. It doesn't even have to be religious, but he's seen me put a cohesive argument forward for any position that I've held. And I got my dad to admit, he's like, look, you've read the Quran more than I have in a language that you understood and have studied. I'm not going to deny that, right? I still believe in it and I like it. However, I don't follow everything that it says. And I'm like, that's it. That's all I wanted to know, that you're able to make that distinction, that you're able to tell me that you will not go into war, you know, if somebody threatens you. Like we live in a civilized culture where we don't start killing people because we don't agree with them. However, what has been very funny is that when people don't agree with me, they want to kill me. And when I show my dad this message, they're like, they're not Muslims. And I'm like, wait, hang on. Do you know they think you're not Muslim? And I'm like, I've studied the Sunni side of it as well. Like I went to the deep Salafi side of it to study like what their thoughts were. And they're pretty extreme, but Shias aren't any better. Like I've seen what Ashura is like. And I would bring up these arguments with my family on not a like, I don't want you to be ex-Muslim. I don't want you to be Muslim. I want you to think about your position when you assert any idea. So, you know, my dad's like, I just want you to stop pork and alcohol. And I'm like, pork I can understand because, you know, it's animal killing. But however, beef is worse than pork. And there's no logical reason for you to stop one and the other. Alcohol is actually and can be good for you if you have it in moderation in this age. And he just didn't know what. He was just like, well, I've put my piece out there. You're an adult. You know, you're not, nobody's going to convince you of doing anything. So my whole journey
The hell with
became on this
moderation.
really.
We drink until our liver explodes and we regret the hangover and we say never again, but we always keep drinking. So that's fine.
So I have actually stopped drinking for a bit. Like when I came back from, so when after I was arrested, I was in fear that somebody would spike my drink. So I stopped going anywhere. Like I stopped drinking.
Oh, wow.
Actually, yeah. So it was a scary time because I knew people were following me and I couldn't leave the house. So we had cameras installed and everything. I couldn't leave the house without a family member. And I'll actually make a video on facts and stats about my arrest as a solo video just on it, because there was so much Mission 007 involved in it. But I think me being that point in my family started challenging everybody to a point now that for the most part, my brother doesn't disagree with me, not just in Islam, but like human rights. He has his daughter, he loves his daughter. And I'm like, can you imagine your daughter getting anything less than a man? And I'm like, so what happens if your daughter wants to remove it? And he's like, I've told her, if she wants to remove the hijab, you can remove the hijab. And you know, he's seen his own sister take on a lot of these things, and it's really great that he sees me as a source of inspiration, because he's the one who then relays a lot of, I guess, what my parents call misbehavior, or a lot of like, you know, if I go to an extreme and I'm like, no, I just don't want to hear the Quran, like, you listen to it. So like literally I was staying with my brother because he has his own house, And we had a room playing dua in my room playing the music in the same house at the same time in the evening. Nobody cared. We were just like, it's my room, I do as I please. It's your room, you do as you please, right? And when my brother and I would go out, he would order Coke and I'm here on whiskey. So like, you know, a lot of these arguments that people make, you just wanted to remove the hijab. I removed the hijab before I left Islam, but, you know, I think I valued more of feminism, or equal rights rather, because I know a lot of people have different definitions of feminism. I valued more of that for not women only, but for gay rights, for human rights, for apostates, for blasphemers. Like, why should anybody be killing anyone? Right? And people can argue that's not the real Islam, but we all know it's there. This is nothing what Muhammad has not done in his lifetime, and this is something that people should read up on, which a lot of Muslims don't. They've only been told, like, I used to be an Islamic history teacher. I was really good at my Islamic history. Like, I loved history. So like Islamic history, I was really good at. And I used to be a teacher to like kids in grade 4. And when you are a teacher, you have a syllabus before then, and you like study and you have to know those facts. So, you know, all of it was just butterfly and roses. They're like, oh, Muhammad did this. He was so brave. He can, you know, he helped these 50 women and took them home. Nobody mentioned sex slaves. Nobody mentioned that they were there for sex.
I was going to say,
you didn't have to
Zara,
marry
you know,
them.
the Quran is very similar to the Old Testament and even the New Testament. There's so many things in there, and you can choose to use a cafeteria religion where you pick and choose. And you know the concept of abrogation in the Quran, where a verse is stopped from being used because it's no longer valid, and it gets updated 1.01 by God, and you know all the nice and kind stuff before Muhammad had his own army. It's completely changed after that. I was going to say to you, what is my favorite mockery of blasphemy? I don't know if you know Ricky Gervais, but he's one of my favorite actors. But
I love Ricky Gervais. I met Ricky Gervais. I met Ricky Gervais in person 3 times.
All right, he is funny, isn't he? He's just his giggle.
Sorry, it got a bit cut out. I don't know if this is
that's all right. But he makes, I think, one of the best lines about blasphemy.
Ricky Gervais is amazing.
I'll stop for a bit until you come back and you finish your sentence, because I know there's a bit of a delay.
Yeah, no, you go.
Okay, so he was saying, I think about the blasphemy. It's a law made to protect an omniscient and omnibenevolent and omnipotent God from having his feelings hurt by his own creation. So it's like it doesn't make sense at all. Why would an all-powerful, all-knowing God being upset by something uttered by a limited being? It just makes no sense whatsoever.
Absolutely. I mean, imagine how weak is your God if he needs you to defend him. Like, how weak can this person be? I've been called a slut. I've been called so many different things. I've had death threats come to me. And even then, I've never had anybody pick up my fights or have to defend me. Like, heck, I don't have bodyguards, and maybe at some point, I hope I never required. But, you know, like, imagine people who have this mindset, this victim mindset, that if you insult somebody who I've never met, I've only been taught about, and, you know, like, you know, I guess if somebody insulted my grandparents, I'd go like, oh, well, they're dead. They don't really care.
But
like,
you know,
I've
Zara,
had people send rape threats.
I wish the defense is in the form of strong arguments. Like, I can understand that. I can understand somebody saying, well, you're that, and I go, hold on a minute, I've got some evidence that I'm not. 1, 2, 3. But the defense is in the form of, shut up or I'll chop something off, you know. that's the defense.
Usually with
no argument.
Yeah. And usually with women, it's always a sexual threat. And when it comes to men, it's the sexual threat against the women in their lives. So it's like your mom, your sister, your wife, your daughter. And I'm like, what are you trying to prove? like, what exactly are you trying to show people? Because what I do is I screenshot every thread. So what came really handy when I was actually arrested was me showing that continuous threats that I got from the society, from the community I was from, who actually said they would kill me, they want me dead, and they were happy about it, and all the comments. And I'm like, this is what I'm facing. And, you know, the person who was the journalist, he was a Christian, and he's like, okay, fine, you're an atheist, so what? But like, I've never seen somebody, I never thought Tanzanians could be like this. Neither did I. But this was one of those things that we're like, you know, how is this not considered hate speech? Because I got banned from Facebook for posting up rape threats that I got. And that wasn't my, like, you're just
I
victim
know who
blaming
did
me
it.
now.
Was it Tawakkul Kerman? Is it that Facebook lady now that she chops everybody? I think she's now
No,
been. Go ahead.
usually what I do is I had a few friends who worked at Facebook, and I asked them on what are some, like, you know, I put a comprehensive list of how there were groups targeting me or other ex-Muslims, and those groups were shut down because I put a really good argument. I showed them evidence, and I'm like, this is malicious threats, right? And if any ex-Muslim made those threats against Muslims, I would report that too, because I've done that. I've had white conservatives or Western conservatives who go like, oh yeah, they deserved it. And I'm like, no, they didn't. Nobody deserves to be killed for their faith or disbelief or belief.
You got 20 followers right there.
I think if anybody is embarrassed, it should be me. But I guess to wrap up, my journey to leaving it all came from me actually reading the Quran, and then looking at, so I'm an analyst, so looking at data stats and figures in the Middle East. So looking at what are women's rights in the Muslim majority countries, because they always talk about how Islam is the first feminist religion. And then I'm like, all right, let's look at Muslim majority countries who would largely represent these rights. And I'm like, oh, okay, so they're not high on their women's rights ranking. And you know, other countries that are not Muslim majority also fall in there, but you'll see the large correlation is that they're all guided or grounded by religious theocracies. And just looking at all of this, to me, it was so insulting being a woman and still following Islam and then making excuses for it. You know, I have now reached a stage where even my sisters don't make excuses for it. They're just like, oh, because I want to. They're not going to justify it. And I'm like,
I'll
that's
tell you
fine.
what, Zara, if I was a woman, I'll have absolutely zero doubt. I mean, leaving Islam, I mean, you know, you struggled with for a couple of years, and you want to make sure you're leaving it for the right reasons because it's such a big decision. But if I was a woman, probably that period would have been halved, or even like would be. It's completely blatant insult for women.
Or twice, because it's much harder, because I think especially when you're a hijab wearing woman, it is so hard waking up wearing a hijab before you go out when you're like, I bloody hate this, right? Or especially because women are so constrained and they have the burden of honor, shame, guilt, modesty all on them, to a point that it makes it almost impossible for them to even be public about it. But even just coming out of it, it's like, oh my God, in your brain, you've already guilted yourself into, what will my family think? Because women are more likely to be killed in honor killing than men are. Men will most likely get disowned and will most likely endure violence from mob lynches as compared to women. And, you know, for women, it's usually families.
Well, I think coming out, I agree. Coming out would be a lot more difficult than that of the man. But you probably end up making the decision in your mind and having to be a closet atheist for quite some time, which is horrible, because you're almost acting always, you're faking things. You're acting not in accordance with your beliefs or what you really think, which is a horrible thing to do.
but then what's worse is a perspective where women have accepted it, where women have gone like, oh yeah, well, we get our man, like we're gonna get married and they have to give us money and we're gonna get their inheritance. And I was never raised like that. I don't know, but I was never raised to be dependent on a man. Even if my parents did propose the idea that maybe I should think about getting married, and slowly that disseminated as I became an activist, but also as I became, I guess, more educated. My terms were, if I marry a man, he has to be smart, like he has to be more educated and hold more degrees as compared to me, only so I can defer the whole marriage thing. And at that point, they were like, look, this is not happening for you. Like, they never forced it on me. They tried talking about it, and then they were like, yeah, it's not happening, to a point that even my aunties and uncles had already given up on me, which is most likely the case for women, where they're pressured by their families to do it. But I guess it was like my experience in relation to a lot of women that wrote. So Faithless Hijabi was born out of a lot of women writing in private about their stories. They were horrific. I went through nothing as compared to these women have. They have been sexually abused by their family members. They have been assaulted for simple things. They have been yelled at. And I thought this is mostly an Arab problem. Like, it doesn't happen in my community because, we're kind of progressive. But the truth was, it did happen. Just that nobody would ever talk about it. They would come to me in private, and I couldn't even, because my dad knew quite a lot of people. I couldn't even tell my dad. I'm like, do you know this guy assaults his daughter? And I was like, yeah, there are people in the community that do that. It's not just an Arab thing. It's not an Iranian thing. It's not an Arab, like, it's not a Saudi thing. This is a very Tanzanian Koja thing. And it's like, oh, maybe because he's like that. And I'm like, no, I'm not saying all people are like this. The way you
said daughter just now sounded Aussie. I'm getting a bit of, obviously the American is is dominance in the backgrounds, but every now and then I'm getting a bit of Pommy and getting a bit of Aussie.
Yeah, it changes time and time. It definitely. Sorry, I was trying to adjust the light and it just turned off.
That's all right. Take your time.
Anyway, no, it changes time to time, because I understood English more in the olden British language, and then when I moved to England, that some of the words didn't sound very foreign to me, but because I worked at Google and I worked with a lot of Americans and traveled to the US a lot of times, I picked up on a lot of, even when I'd say, oh, can I have a glass of water? Nobody would understand me. And they're like, oh, you need water? So I had to fend for myself.
Jesus.
Yeah, I had to fend for myself and go like, yes, that's what I need. And I'm going to start talking this way because I'm tired of repeating it 7 times. Yeah. So yeah, no.
How do you say water? How do you say water in Swahili?
Maji.
Magi?
No, so it's Maji, but it's not Maji. It's like
Magi.
Hard, you guys. It's one of those words in Arabic that, if you haven't spoken it like the ha and the qa, it's really hard for you to pronounce. Yeah, so it's like Madi. It's like DYI as a pronunciation. So in the end, instead of JI, but it's written as JI.
Oh, Madi. Okay.
But yeah, I think Dolly's comment on British accent is hard. I feel like when I lived there for the first few months, it was hard. And now I can't distinguish between what is not a normal accent, because British or Australian just sounds so normal to me that I can't really tell. Sometimes I'm like, oh, you're from England? I didn't pick up because I've lived there for so long. And I'm like,
in Queen's accents anyway. I mean, it wasn't Cockney or anything. You didn't say water.
No, yeah,
Water.
no. So I've been watching a lot of Peaky Blinders, which I'm like, oh my God, you guys are amazing. But there is this TV show, Bridgerton, and I was so into it that when I had my first meeting and I was like, I cannot do this. And everybody's like, who are you talking to right now? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I watched a lot of TV shows. I watched a lot of TV shows. Working from home is hard. And, you watch TV shows while you're working. And the way they would talk is very different. It was like posh British. And yeah, so they're like, I will not accept it. And I'm like, I need to stop because I think I pick up a lot of accents easy, and mostly with my parents, I can never have this level of conversation with them, mostly because it's really hard for me to articulate this in a different language. But at the
Yeah.
same time, if I talk English, I have to go like, instead of saying we can't talk about this because of this, I'll just like, we just don't agree on things, and it just simplifies a lot of things. And I think it's because I've never been really interested in politics or any areas. I feel like my dad is a staunch Iranian supporter until I went in, and I'm like, did you know Qasem Soleimani killed thousands of people, like hundreds and thousands of people? He's like, no, this is propaganda. And I'm like, well, if the propaganda exists, have you tried researching alternate things? And I showed him a video of Hassan Radwan, like a very simple video, because I knew he wouldn't be able to understand Christopher Hitchens. And then, I'm like, oh, I have another video of you. And he's like, you're corrupting my mind. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to stay silent.
Who's Hassan Radwan? I've heard that name before.
So he is, I don't know if you know Vidu and Mimsy, comedian couple in London, but they're Mimsy's dad. So Mimsy's dad is Hassan Radwan. Really good guy. You should try and get him. I don't think he likes much podcasts anyway, but he's so soft-spoken.
Is he English? Is he?
Yeah. So he's half English, half Egyptian.
The guy with the Egyptian background.
Yeah, half Egyptian, half English.
I know him. I know him very well.
He's amazing. He's such a nice person.
He's a teacher, I think. A teacher. Yeah.
He used to be an Islamic teacher. Yeah, he used to be an Islamic teacher. So the way he talks is very simple, very articulate, just to turn a few screws and go like, if God created the universe, then why isn't he presenting himself? And if this is the universe, but scientists have said that the universe expands beyond all of this, why is this not mentioned in the Quran? And I like his tone.
We go way back from the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain. I think it was back. Yeah. And Faith Freedom Forum. Back to the forums days when there were forums. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Faith Freedom, I think. We met on Faith Freedom.
Yeah. Did you go to the UK at the time?
No, we were online. So I was living in New Zealand at the time. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah. All of these people have been so phenomenal in bringing the simple ideas, but I feel like a lot of Muslims are so comfortable with their environment that they'd rather complain about ex-Muslims talking of Islam versus actually go and ask them, what are your sources? I would like to listen to them, and doing their research themselves, because I can't tell you how to think. I can only guide you to what has helped me discover who I am. And if you decide to be a Muslim, then do it. I don't care. I think as long as you're true to yourself, as long as it's your path and you're not being coerced by it, I think it's really just a personal decision. But yeah, no. So I guess that kind of summarizes. I guess that kind of summarizes a lot of how I left, which had nothing to do with my experience or the money I get, because I wish I was getting money right now for not doing anything. I think even my Patreon account, it's closed now, but when I had my Patreon account, it would go to my charity. And Faithless Hijabi has done some tremendous work. Like in the past 8 months, we've helped almost now reaching 40 women and men, mostly women, in the mental health program. And because I went to Tanzania and I saw this clear, it wasn't a religious thing, but it was this clear women empowerment issue with menstrual pads, where girls couldn't go to universities because they didn't have pads, so they'd have to wash their underwear every time. And how can they go to school then? Like, they don't have that tools to utilize, so they just stay at home. And these little things are so important to empowering women to accept themselves as they are. So I opened a menstrual health program, and now we're looking into opening our merchandise store very soon for Pride Month, and especially the Pride that we're having in the UK that I might not be there for. But regardless, still excited to support. So we have plenty of Allies Gay t-shirts, and they're amazing because I had this incredible graphic designer design them. So yes, self-promotion, please. The money goes, all our profits goes to the Faithless Hijabi Fund, which is largely going to be used to helping women and men who have escaped, a lot of these countries, and they need immediate funding versus going through a lot of applications and hoops to get that funding. So something like as simple as I need $20 to buy food. I don't want that to be a deterrent to what they need immediately, and we should be able to have those funds.
Please send me the details of the campaign. I wouldn't mind at all promoting it on my channel and chipping in myself, for sure.
Perfect. Yeah, that would be really nice. But yeah, I'll definitely send you the links. It's all on our website. And
by the way, I'll put all your details in the description of this video. So your website, your channel website, your YouTube channel, your Twitter. So I'll put all your contacts.
I'll be releasing videos very soon anyway. And yeah, so it'll be great to be out there after taking a bit of a break, everything that has been happening and getting my life in order. So that's why I think we asked this podcast, which was meant to be a few months ago, to be like, hey, let me just settle down a little so I'm in a better headspace to do these.
Yeah. I'm realizing today that I've got to have another conversation with you, because it looks like we might not be able to cover everything I wanted to chat to you about today. And I understand also you've got a huge day tomorrow.
Yes, first day of work.
Yeah. Yay!
Yes, I am nervous and excited, but also great to be started. I actually just had my manager email me. He's like, here's your brief for tomorrow. And I'm like, okay, I'll look at it tomorrow then. But yeah, so yeah, I think, next podcast could probably be on more subject based, because I think at this point, a lot of your audiences have had their poor family, your own experience, don't know Arabic, or any other arguments kind of clarified.
Yeah, I think, in today's sort of broadcast, we kind of covered at least the personal family background and some of the reasons why you left there. But that was only the beginning of the journey, because the journey hasn't, stopped there. Obviously, there are a few things. I want to focus more on your organization, the work you've done, your aspiration for the future, the things you're looking forward to do. These are the sort of things. Plus, sort of picking up on a couple of issues in Islam and how you found them over the years.
Yeah, in the journey, always young age, that we always need to be I guess open to recognizing what comes from our past and our experiences as well, and how we work to unlearn a lot of the negativity that we were raised around.
Yeah, that would be great to cover, and hopefully next time around as well, you'll be probably in a better position to have a better internet connection, and we can have a bit more of a fluid and fluent conversation. I still enjoyed every single minute of it, and I wanted to speak a bit more, but I've got after you a conversation with Thomas. He's a friend of yours, I think, Thomas Sheedy.
Oh yes, I know him.
Atheist for Liberty in the US. So I've got to speak with him in a couple of hours, and I've sort of had to.
You're full on scheduling, and you've also worn a blazer. Here I was, I'm like, I'm ready with my pajamas, and I'm like, as soon as this is over, I'm taking my makeup off and going to sleep.
I didn't wear this for you, Zara. What happened is, because you made it a bit earlier, I was perfect. Usually I would have had a bit of a snooze and, put my hat on and whatever, but that was straight from work. So I haven't changed yet.
Yeah, I'm going to ignore all of that, and I'm just going to go like, hey, I think it was a great formal attire.
Well, look, thank you so much for the opportunity to have a conversation with you. It's very natural. It's almost like I've met you and I've spoken to you before, which is brilliant. Even though we literally didn't even have a chance to say hi before the broadcast because of the issues. Yeah, but I'm the you're the kind of person that I'll probably end up, if we were in a big group, I'll buy you a drink and I'll sort of be chatting with you.
Are you Melbourne based?
I'm in Melbourne, yes.
Okay. Well, I'll let you know when I'm down there again. I was there a few weeks ago. But
yeah,
now
please.
that you guys are having lockdowns, I don't want to be stuck there.
Yeah, I know a few people. I think we've got lots of common friends. So Harris Sultan, what's the name of the party? The Secular Party of Australia. The people that run it, I know because I used to go and lecture in one of those churches. I do a bit of philosophy, so I did the problem of evil, and I did the divine hiddenness argument. So I think we will have a lot of friends in common.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I'm going to start doing after I start getting back on YouTube is I have this 30-minute segments on Support Corner, and they're meant to be short and condensed conversation, but more solution based on how we think. So one of them was like on how we think of grief, how we think of hell. And usually what me and Gada would do, would have a topic prepared, would exchange ideas, and we're like, all right, we're just going to talk about it. Or, things like, what can ex-Muslims do in Muslim countries? So like, what are the hidden tips and tricks? But also going deeper into more philosophical issues that many people who want to go down that route can think about. So it'd be great to have you on a specific topic.
I've been mocked for saying Melbourne and not Melbourne.
Sorry.
The reason for my funny accent is I'm half Irish, so that's why I have a funny Egyptian accent. So I speak with an Irish accent every now and then.
They need to take that citizenship away from you. I think the first thing they should ask in a citizenship question is, how do you pronounce Melbourne? Canberra was the hardest for me. I didn't know how to pronounce it.
Canberra.
I was like, Canberra?
Yeah. Canberra.
Or like in Sydney, when we have Darling Harbour, and when we had Americans come in, they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to Darling Harbour. And I was like, don't say that again. So yeah, it would be interesting to have future conversations on topic-based topic-based conversations, specifically because I think there's so many. What I do is I go on Reddit and I see what are the common questions that are asked by a lot of ex-Muslims, and then sometimes I'll go like, oh, here's a video we made, and it just makes it easier. So I think, especially coming from ex-Muslim backgrounds, we're raised a little or quite differently than Christian backgrounds, where, would have the superstitions as jinns and, other forms of witchcraft. And I used to be so scared. Yeah, I used to be so scared because they said that when you're a woman, you can't walk under a tree after Maghrib. So there are evening prayers because the jinn would possess you. And I'm like,
or did you get the singing in the bathroom thing? Singing in the bathroom?
No. What was that?
That's a Sunni thing. Singing in the bathroom, you'll have a jinn sort of possess you, and your neck and face will turn 180 degrees, like the Exorcist. You remember that movie?
Yeah. Or like, that doll who would kill people. I don't know what movie that was. Was it Chuck or something? I don't know.
The door? Is it
the doll? No, the doll, like the Barbie
Chucky,
doll.
like Chucky.
Yeah, and then that doll would just turn.
Yeah.
I hate
that's
that.
Annabelle as well. Annabelle.
Yeah. Anyway, I have to go.
I understand. Got a big day tomorrow.
But thank you so much for having me. This was a lovely chat.
Yeah, thank you very much, Zara. Well, look, we'll let you settle for a few months, and definitely we'll keep in touch. When you're in Melbourne, please let me know. We'll organize a meeting, and all the best for the big day tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a lovely evening, and good luck with your chat with Thomas.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. In a few hours, I'll be with you and Thomas Sheedy. And thank you once again, Zara.
No worries. I had a lovely time.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.